Hello, it's Miss Roberts here, and tonight we're going to review the public speaking slides. Let's begin. All right, so I am going to be moving myself around just as the content shifts over. I want to make sure that's visible for you guys. Okay. All right, so we will talk about speech apprehension, considerations for the audience, brainstorming, extemporaneous delivery, factors of delivery, and visual aids. All right, so in general, for as long as I've been teaching public speaking courses, one of the first chapters that we review is speech apprehension. When people think of getting in front of an audience, they may feel nervous and they may have a fear about public speaking. So before we dive into organization and delivery and making sure that we have our sources within our outlines, we have to confront our fears of public speaking. Now, when we think about speaking in public, especially in front of an audience, putting ourselves in the right headspace is very important. Making sure that we practice and do everything we can to learn the material inside and out, have our note cards handy or our notes handy just in case you need additional support or want to cite our sources. And just enjoying the process will definitely help with speech apprehension. So, one of the first things we can do is use your nervousness to your advantage. If you think about the Inside Out movie, too, one of the main plots of the story is joy versus anxiety. Now, too much anxiety caused the main character to not be able to perform her hockey game. If you've seen the movie, don't want to give away spoilers, but it caused the main character to not feel her best, like anybody, right? But one of the main ideas of the movie was, like a spoilers alert, that anxiety had its place. So, for example, for us to want to do well, we might feel a little bit nervous. So, we can't let that overtake us, but we can use that to encourage us to practice more and make sure we're asking questions and make sure that we're putting our best foot forward in regards to our speech preparation. Then understand your rational and irrational fears. So, with any phobia, sometimes we have really valid concerns, and sometimes we're over exaggerating a little bit. So, if you are worried about being judged by others, or you're worried about totally not doing well, oftentimes, especially in an in-person context, students aren't necessarily thinking about the next person's speech. They're thinking about their own and or the content of what the speaker is saying. So if you do your best and practice and use your notes accordingly, you should do fine. You will be evaluated by me, but I'm not the judge and the jury. I will tell you what you did well and some aspects of your speech performance that you need to work on. So, yes, as a part of my job, I do have to evaluate you, but not completely judge you. There's a difference. I am here to help you improve and here as a support. Also, make sure to maintain and receive your orientation. So when you think about what you would like to see as an audience member, how you want a speaker to engage with you, make sure to keep that same energy and that same idea for when you perform your speech. Keep a positive attitude and use visualization techniques, making sure we're going in there with a positive attitude, just like with the rational versus irrational fears points. Sometimes it's easier for us to visualize all the bad things that could go wrong, but we don't take the time to visualize what could go right. And by being prepared, it can help ease our fears and to the best of our ability, of course, uncertainties happen, things happen, but we at least know that we know our content and we can proceed with our speech. right, so I have to move myself a little bit further. All right. So, the listeners, when you are speaking to an audience, you want to think about why are they listening to you? What are some of the demographic considerations we need to take, not only as far as crafting the message to reach them and their experiences, but to make sure we're being mindful of our words and how we address certain audiences. When we have audience analysis, we identify and adapt our remarks to the pertinent characteristics of the audience and their experiences. My apologies. One of the ways you can do that is providing a poll, or during your speech, you can ask your audience to raise their hand with certain closed yes or no questions. But understanding the audience and who they are is very important to the public speaking experience. Give them a reason to be there and listen to you. All right. So with the informative speech in particular, but you can also use this for other types of speeches, such as the persuasive speech or any speech to entertain or speech to narrate. You want to think about the purpose of your speech. Each speech purpose, such as entertain, inform, persuade, has different formats and different ways to go about it. For example, to inform is to give information, to lecture, and to teach. To persuade is to provide the information, but I'm trying to change your actions. So, similar mechanisms to completely different purposes. All right. Brainstorming is sometimes more challenging for this assignment because this is probably one of the truly open-ended type of assignments that you'll ever have in your college experience. I'm telling you that you can talk about pretty much almost anything. However, with that free reign, a phenomenon can happen. You can have the paradox of choice effect. With unlimited options, it makes it harder to choose. Think about the menu at In-N-Out versus the one at the Cheesecake Factory. The one at the Cheesecake Factory is super thick and their cheesecake options are even thicker. But at In-N-Out, I know what I like, I know what I can get, and it's from a different set, a limited set rather, of options. So when you brainstorm, you can use personal inventory, what you like, what you don't like, personal experiences and interests. Then with hobbies, you can also talk about hobbies. You can have a cluster of different types of categories. So, for example, say if you want to talk about different countries, name the first 5 countries that you may want to talk about, and then choose one from that set. You can also search the internet. There might be talks, goings on, current events that are trending online. You can focus on that. So I like to do this exercise in class, and I also set it up in our class where we have a discussion where we list the topics we already know about and list the topics we want to learn more about to help us with the brainstorming process. It can help narrow an infinite amount of topics to several. Okay. So some informative speaking or types of informative speaking genres, if you will. You could talk about objects, so anything that is tangible, anything that you can hold, anything that you can touch. So you can think about your favorite things, or what is the thing, an actual object. So when I say a thing, an actual object that you may want to focus on and discuss. Then we also have the processes. So it's a series of actions leading to a specific result. So think about a certain process that you can do well. What are some things that you can do well? What are some steps, a recipe? What can you put together that you can talk to us about? Then we have events, an observable occurrence, gathering, or ceremony. There might be a holiday that you want to talk about, a historical event that you want to talk about, but you can focus on events for your speech. But then concepts, which is essentially the opposite of object speeches, are intangible ideas, beliefs, values, theories, and principles. So with these, you want to make sure to have the audience have a shared body of knowledge. And say, for instance, you might take one section of your informative speech to explain concepts that will help us and carry us over to the rest of the speech. Then we can use descriptions and explanations within the speech to describe phenomenon, add testimony, add narrative and color into the story. With explanations, we can clarify ideas and concepts, especially with an informative speech. It lends itself to that because you're teaching us about the topic. And then we have instructions. We teach and provide information in a step by step style. So, a how to guide, if you will. So, in essence, some tips for the informative speech. You want to limit the body section to 3 to 5 main points. You want to be able to chunk the ideas into digestible pieces and leave the audience with something to think about, but too much information might lead to overwhelm. Divide, coordinate, order those main points. So, I do provide an outline to help you do that. Use a strong introduction, attention getter, preview ideas. The conclusion is that recap and that review of what you just talked about. And then we have transitions, internal previews, and internal summaries in order to help you and the audience transition from one point to another. The internal previews are generally found in the introduction. It announces what you're going to talk about. So, for example, today I will talk about A, B, and C. And then the internal summaries usually occur in the conclusion. In conclusion, I just talked about A, B, and C. So, in the introduction, you gain the attention of the audience. This can be done with a question, quote, short story, fact or stat. Just note if you do use a quote or a fact or stat, make sure to cite your source verbally and within the outline. So, for instance, you can say, according to and such says. Then you want to establish the importance of the topic. You want to preview the thesis or central idea and main points, and cite sources verbally if necessary. Then we have the body section, so we're going to limit this to 3 to 5 main points using transition words such as next, first, second, however, moreover, helps us link multiple ideas together. Order the points in a way that is easiest for us to understand and remember. Topical order is pretty simple. You have your idea and you put it into different sections. And of course, as you incorporate your research, cite your sources verbally and in text. Finally, we have the conclusion. This is your recap and review of the main points, so you can use your central idea or thesis as a guide to provide that recap. You can remind the audience of the importance of the topic and end with something meaningful and impactful. And if always, or excuse me, as always, make sure to cite the sources verbally or in text if needed. Okay. So with extemporaneous public speaking, this is the public speaking style that we use in this class. That is when the speech is planned in advance and presented in a direct conversational matter. You use notes with cues, but you don't just straight read off the notes. And you don't need to memorize it either because you are going to practice the content, absorb the content, but you excuse me, but to remain or to keep that conversational tone with that practice, you'll have your note cards for a guide, but you'll know how to deliver your content to the audience. And in essence, each performance is a little different each time. So, say for instance, if you performed your speech in front of an audience and then immediately after performed in front of another audience, essentially the content will be the same, but you might perform it a little bit differently, maybe add a couple of things in a more impromptu way. Maybe someone will have a question, so you have to make some last minute changes. So essentially, it's the same but not identical. Then we have factors of speech delivery. So whether you are online or in person, make sure that you are aware of your body language. Make sure you're dressed appropriately for the occasion. Make sure you have control of your movements and gestures. I'm seated right now, so I have to make sure that I'm sitting straight up, not slouching, not laying back, but sitting straight up because I am presenting to you right now. Now, if you're in class or in an in person class, you will be standing tall and presenting from the class, not necessarily making any unnecessary movements. Make sure your facial expressions match the tone of your speech and providing direct eye contact to the audience. So, in this context, I am looking at the camera and providing that eye contact. However, in person context, make sure you look at the audience and scan. Make sure to look at them in their eyes, not just on the top of their heads. Or don't look at an imaginary clock at the back. Look at your audience. There's no substitute for eye contact. Then we have factors in speech delivery. So, speech delivery, verbal delivery, and vocal delivery is very important for us to have mastery of our voice. So, for example, we have the volume, which is the loudness or the softness of our voice. Then we have the rate. So, this is how fast and how slow we speak. The pitch is the highness and the lowness of your voice. Then articulation is how we pronounce all parts of the word. But there can be errors in articulation. So, for example, with deletion, we leave off parts of the word. Substitution, we replace parts of the word with an incorrect sound. Addition, adding parts to the word, or slurring, overlapping the end of one word with the beginning of the next. By slowing down our speech rates, we're able to have more control over our articulation. Make sure that you're loud enough for the audience, or if you're online, make sure you use a microphone or loud enough for the laptop microphone to receive your voice. Make sure that if you have a higher pitched voice, you may want to speak a little louder just because it's easier for the human ear to pick up bass voices. However, you have a low booming voice, make sure you're not filling up the room and sounding like Mufasa. Okay? Then we have visual aids. Visual aids are important. They allow your speech to become interesting and or can provide a greater understanding for the content. So you can use object models, photos, videos, and audio files, diagrams, pie charts, and line charts. I'm using visual aid right now. I'm using the slides to break down certain concepts and provide me with an outline of sorts of what to discuss with you tonight. But of course, if you have any questions about visual aids, let me know. So with visual aids, there's a couple of tips and tricks you can do to make that a really good experience. Keep them very simple so you don't need to assemble everything. If you're in person, use as, excuse me, make sure that you use as many slides as you feel comfortable with. Make sure they're easy to manipulate, easy to read. Make sure it's visible to the audience. Make sure that it's visually interesting and neat and appropriate. and make sure you have control of your visual aid at all times. All right. Okay, if you have any questions, please let me know. Thank you so much for listening to my lecture tonight. Hope to see you soon. I can't wait to hear your speeches. Thank you so much and enjoy your evening or your day if you're watching this in the day. Thank you. Bye.